In this game, someone has stolen an artifact from the British Museum, a sacred and cursed Egyptian statuette called the Eye of Isis. The player are called in to investigate its disappearance, find and return it to the pyramid where it once resided. Curse: The Eye of Isis is a horror action game. Players choose to play either Dr. Darian Dane or his assistant, Victoria Sutton. Each character has different scenarios to complete to reach the same objective. They can travel to 7 different locations, battling undead monsters, such as zombies and mummies, as well as deadly objects. Players can locate and use a variety of weapons including a shotgun, rifle, flamethrower and mortar gun. During the game, real-time 3D cutscenes, interactions with NPCs as well as visual and audio messages provide more information to advance the storyline. Gameplay is in third person with action scenes reverting to first person. The game shares the same sort of atmospheric setting, gameplay, fixed camera angles, and ammo preservation as the earlier Resident Evil games, as well as many other archetypal survival horror games in the genre, such as Obscure and Silent Hill. The game received mixed reception upon release. Team Xbox gave a mixed review, calling it an average game, but that,
being a budget title, gamers will find that Curse is one of the more solid El Cheapo titles, and worth the $20.
Game Informer gave a generally negative review, comparing the game to a B-horror movie, and stated that,
the menus are clunky, the map is useless, and combat is too easy.
Although the controls were noted as above average, especially compared to the Resident Evil series.
Echo Knight is a trilogy of Japanese adventure games developed by From Software. All the titles feature a protagonist called Richard pursuing a magical artifact and interacting with ghosts. Titles are played from a first-person perspective, and place a focus on puzzles and exploration. All 3 titles were produced by series creator Toshifumi Nagashima. The series has generally met with mixed reception, and has remained obscure. Echo Knight later inspired Hidetaka Miyazaki while developing Derasane for the PlayStation VR. The original Echo Knight began as an experimental title based on the realistic graphics created for King's Field 3. It was released for the PlayStation in 1998. The story revolves around Richard Osmond, the game's protagonist, and his journey to find out what happened to the ship Orpheus, which mysteriously disappeared from the sea. The game received mixed reviews according to Game Rankings. Echo Knight 2, Nemori no Shihaisha, was released in 1999 for the PlayStation. While it shares common elements with the prequel, Echo Knight 2 takes place in its own timeline. The game is set in an old Gothic manor house. The player takes control of Richard Osmond, whose girlfriend, Christina, went missing.
Echo Knight Beyond, known in Japan as Nebula Echo Knight, is the 3rd game in the Echo Knight series. The game tells a science fiction ghost story, set in the not-too-distant future. Players take the role of a newlywed, off for a honeymoon on the moon. The vessel crashes before reaching its lunar resort destination, separating the just-married couple and leaving the hero alone at an abandoned research base. Players explore the station from a first-person perspective inside a spacesuit. In addition to the many spiritual anomalies that haunt the station, strange lunar lights and relative weightlessness add to the atmosphere of the game's environments. Unlike most other first-person games, there is no use of firearms in the game. When confronted by a ghost, the player must run before the player character's heart rate reaches a critical level, otherwise he will die of a heart attack. There are no means of directly defending against ghosts, they must be avoided. The player's spacesuit is equipped with a flashlight, but must be kept charged by batteries. The ghosts can be defeated only by clearing the mist they inhabit. This is done by using a control panel to activate the ventilation system. To purify the souls of the dead, personal items important to them in life must be found and brought to them. The only exception to this is the priest ghost, who will pop out from time to time. When ghosts must be avoided, they can be spotted through the use of security monitors, which are placed throughout the station. The game received mixed reviews according to Metacritic. In Japan, FAMSA gave it a score of 3 7s and 1 6 for a total of 27 out of 40. The game started on December 24, 2005. Sergeant Dennis Riley, member of the Special U.S. Marine Team Red Light, receives a distress call from Fort Stewart, a top-secret research facility in Antarctica. The signal requests an immediate airstrike on the base. The team is sent to investigate the matter, but their plane crashes in the tundra. When Dennis arrives at the facility, he finds out that something horrible has occurred, and must fight for his life as he encounters mutated creatures and is in danger of getting infected himself. Extermination is a survival horror game. The player character has limited ammunition for his firearms, and in many cases it is advisable to run away from monsters. Besides the traditional health bar, Dennis also has an infection rate, which may gradually grow when attacked by monsters. Once his infection rate reaches 100%, he becomes very weak and will eventually mutate into a monster. Infection can be countered by applying MTS vaccines. The player character's default weapon, a special purpose rifle, can be customized with enhancements such as zoom scope, flashlight grip, radar, and parts which convert it to other weapon types such as flamethrower, shotgun, or rocket launcher. Dennis can also fight with a knife. An unique factor in Extermination's gameplay is the battery pack. Dennis uses this rechargeable battery to activate various machinery, and execute functions common to most video games, such as saving the game. The battery pack can be upgraded to hold more power by collecting cells found in various locations around the fort. Since the title was a first-party game and came out very early in the system's life cycle, it was used as a showcase for the system at trade shows before its release. There are significant differences between the European and North American versions of the game, including a redesign of the main protagonist, and entirely re-recorded dialogue using different voice actors. The European version was also released 6 weeks before the US version, with a more literal translation of the original Japanese release, compared to the more Hollywood movie writing in the American release. The game was considered the first survival horror release on the PlayStation 2, and generated some hype amongst critics, but Extermination only received mostly average reviews. Reviewers noted that the storyline and setting were reminiscent of John Carpenter's 1982 film The Thing, while some noted resemblances between Ennio Morricone's soundtrack for the film and the music present in Extermination. Siren, known as Forbidden Siren in the PAL region, is a survival horror stealth game. It was followed by 2 sequels and a loose film adaptation. Directed and co-written by Keiichiro Toyama, after he wrote and directed Silent Hill for Konami in 1999, the game revolves around interconnected storylines featuring a cast of characters throughout different time periods, who find themselves in the mysterious town of Hanuda, inhabited by the Shibito, deadly zombie-like creatures. Siren is divided into stages, each taking place in one of 10 areas in Hanuda, and organized chronologically in a table called the Link Navigator. In order to complete a stage, the player must accomplish a primary objective that usually involves reaching an exit point, subduing a Shibito, or finding an item. Objectives in different stages are interconnected via a butterfly effect, and a character's actions in one stage can trigger a secondary objective in another stage. There are miscellaneous items scattered throughout each stage that give the player further insight into the plot's background. The game's player characters possess a psychic power known as sightjacking, which enables them to see and hear what a nearby Shibito, or human, sees and hears, and thus pinpoint its position, as well as gain knowledge of their activities and of the position of obtainable items. The clarity of each target depends on the distance from the player character. The game encourages the player to avoid Shibito rather than fight them. Characters can walk silently, avoid the use of a flashlight, and crouch behind objects to elude detection. Certain mission objectives require the player to use items or the environment to distract Shibito from their activity. Others require the player to escort an NPC. Player characters can also shout at any time in order to get the attention of nearby Shibito. If the player is seen by a shibito, the latter will pursue the character to kill them either with a melee or ranged weapon, or by strangulation. Rather than employ traditional facial animation methods with polygonal transformation, images of real human faces were captured from 8 different angles and superimposed onto the character models, an effect similar to projecting film onto the blank face of a mannequin. The game was positively received by critics for its story, atmosphere and originality, although its gameplay drew criticism. IGN's reviewer Jeremy Dunham praised the originality of the concept, the use of sight jacking, the graphics and the storyline, but criticized the difficulty level and the trial and error nature of the gameplay. Siren Blood Curse is the 3rd installment in the series and was released in 2008 for the PlayStation 3. The game is a reimagining of the first game and it tells the story of an American camera crew's disappearance in a mountainous region in Japan. Forbidden Siren 2, known in Japan as Siren 2, is the sequel to Siren. The game tells the story of several characters who become trapped on Yamajima Island, off the coast of mainland Japan. In 1976, during a blackout, the entire population of the island disappeared without trace or explanation. 29 years later, in 2005, a journalist is visiting the island to conduct research for an article, when the ferry he and a small group of other passengers are on capsizes. Shortly after this, a group of soldiers crash land on the island. The game is played from the perspective of these characters, and out of chronological order, as the protagonists attempt to survive the island's monsters and discover its mystery. The sequel adds new features to the game, most notably the new Yamibito demons, who are more resilient, aggressive, and intelligent than the Shibito. They are repelled by light, and can be weakened by a flashlight. The sequel also has a new alert system which functions through the controller's vibration function, and alerts players of any nearby danger. Stealth plays an important role, as well as light and darkness, as the creatures are sensitive to it in different ways. Just like in the previous game, players can sight jack enemies and animals, to view the environment through their eyes. There are over 30 weapons to collect and there are 3 difficulty options. The Western release had both Japanese and English audio, unlike the last game which only had English audio. The game never received a North American release. Forbidden Siren 2 received average reviews according to Metacritic. Eurogamer's Christian Reed said that the game improved on many of the problems of the predecessor, especially the difficulty level and trial and error nature of the gameplay, but simultaneously fell somewhat short of the original. Videogamer.com's Chris Pickering also said that the game removed many of the problems inherent to the original, but at the same time, also fell somewhat short in many respects. Siren is a film inspired by the game, but featuring different plot and characters. It was released in Japan to coincide with the Japanese release of the game. The film revolves around a writer who moves to a remote island with his daughter and young son. The villagers on the island are strange and unfriendly to them, and warns them that they must not go outside when the island's siren starts wailing.